Hello, everybody. It's February 27th, 2025, and this is the Backdrop Weekly Dev Meeting. We get together every week to talk about development priorities for Backdrop CMS Core. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet, and I'm core committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project. We've got a half dozen folks with us today, and we'll go around the room and do some intros. We'll start with Laren, and then we'll go to Jen.
Excuse me, I'm Larry Krotbaker. I am a core committer and contrib maintainer for a variety of modules and work with Atten Design Group. Over to Jen.
Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. That's it for me today.
Okay. Justin, and then Eli.
Justin Kaiser. I'm normally in Muncie, Indiana, developer for a nonprofit, and I released a version of the OpenAI module this afternoon that does the alt text generation. So I'm kind of excited about that.
That's great. Thanks, Justin. Eli, and then Izzy.
Hello, my name is Eli Lisick. I'm a developer for Giant Rabbit. I'm calling from San Diego, California.
Thanks, Eli. And Izzy.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. I'm a freelance developer. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Izzy. All right. Let's see. Announcements wise, we've got one new contrib project since last week, a module by IndigoZilla called Automatic Hero Colors, which looks like it somehow automatically sets the background color for the hero block, which is kind of neat. And let's see.
I can just jump in on that. I don't have a release yet, but I'm working on Bean actively, so that will be available very shortly.
Oh, great. Block entities aren't nodes, that
Yep.
module. That's great. That's real good. Let's see. Other announcements? Maybe Jen, do you want to talk about backdropcms.org now? That might be
Sure.
to know.
So for the last month and a bit, we've had a collaboration between Giant Rabbit and Lullabot working on a redesign for the homepage of backdropcms.org. We originally wanted this to coincide with the release of Backdrop 130, but we realized the timing on that was not realistic when we actually started moving. But it is nearing completion now, and we're hoping to push the new homepage to the beta site some point today. We're going to do a quick QA there and deploy it. And then after it's live, we will start taking feedback. If there's anything major we've overlooked or things we want to add, we do have a design that sort of works in repeatable patterns. So we should be able to expand it to add things as needed, which is great. So yeah, we're going to push it out as soon as we can and then iterate as our usual fashion, I suppose.
Yeah.
Wes has been doing the majority of the coding on that, so huge thanks to Wes. The design team at Lullabot jumped in and helped turn the sort of advice and experience coming from the Giant Rabbit team and what their clients have been asking for into like a beautiful finished product. So that I was just so thrilled that both groups were so eager to work together and collaborate and combine, the best of both of them and to make us something beautiful. So yeah, really looking forward to getting that out.
Did you say the URL where it will
It's going
be?
to be our beta site, which is beta.backdropcms.org. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll be out later today. Not on the production site, just but it'll be available for preview.
Yep.
And that I'm sorry, I was multitasking, so I hope I'm not repeating. That does also include like a new header design that applies to every page of the website, including the navigation, right?
Yeah, it's not very different. Header and footer is really similar to what we have now, but it is going to be rolling out in a new version of the Borg theme, which we then will be able to apply across all of our sites. But primarily, the biggest difference is what's between the header and the footer. But there are some slight changes to header and footer as well.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that this is one of those tiny little things that the user account menu has been styled, which I just really appreciate. The drop down, because previously in the first design, we didn't have a design for the user account menu, and so it just kind of got implemented, as best a developer can replicate, the design from another part of the page to a different part, and now it's got a specific design for it.
The Twitter logo is coming off of the header.
Oh.
I'm really excited about that.
You mean the footer?
No, the header. There's a tweet bird right under the user login
Oh my
section.
gosh, there sure is.
I know, just it's been there so long you don't even notice it, but it bothers me every day.
Yeah, it's time to be done with that, especially since we
Yep.
don't really update Twitter or X anymore anyway.
Right. So many things about it that are sort of old, so just kind of a little
Yeah, that's
refresh.
great.
Yeah. But
Okay, let's see. I also had one other announcement that Tim might appreciate, and that's that Tim's getting ready for Backdrop Live in April, and the events.backdropcms.org website has been cleared out to allow for the Backdrop Live starting in April. And I think that it's possible, probable. Oh, Tim's here.
me and Martin, they've both been working on it.
Yeah, your ears are burning, Tim. I was just talking about Backdrop Live.
Yeah.
That I think that the website you can create a session now for the April one. It's not quite totally reset, but it looks like it could be ready to start accepting sessions for those very eager.
No, I think sessions for sure. I'm not sure if we've tested the registration yet, but actually it's live. So we just need a little bit of help testing it, but I think it's basically ready. Yeah.
Great.
Martin and I started working on that yesterday, and Jen helped out. Thanks when we got stuck.
Yeah, I should update the documentation on how to
Oh,
do
yeah,
that.
just also, people should remember it starts on April the 3rd, like at the beginning of April, not somewhere else in the middle or late April.
Is that just okay? Just you don't get surprised when you turn your calendar page over. You're like, oh my gosh.
It's often been sort of around the 15th, so I think, yeah, that's a good
Ah,
reminder.
got it. All right. Any other announcements that people have that they'd like to share? Okay. Great. We'll move into general discussion. Some people brought some topics for today. And I'm sorry, I already forgot who was asking about tugboats and how Drupal.org is using it versus what we're doing. Is that you, Justin? Okay. Yeah, can you just restate your question?
Well, I went to a session at Florida Drupal Camp called How to Add Tugboat Previews to Your Drupal Module or Theme. And it looked very familiar because it's exactly what we do for core issues in GitHub. And what it consisted of was adding a tugboat folder with a YAML file in there to your module. And then every time a PR got added to your module, there was magically a tugboat preview for that with the patch. And since we already do the same thing for core, I wondered if there was some kind of limitation on our tugboat, or if we could maybe do something like that too, or if people even wanted that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think let me look at what our tugboat account does. So I think we've got the two primary accounts. We've got one for the demos from backdropcms.org, and then we have one for the core pull requests. Oh, and looks like we also have one for backdropcms.org, like, all of the the operations websites like backdropcms.org itself, the flagship website. So we don't have an account specifically for Contrib. Oh wow, there's the core pull requests issue queue. Yeah, there's 266 open sandboxes for core pull requests right now, which is great. We love to see that. But yeah, we don't have one specifically for Contrib, and we probably could, but access might be a little bit of an issue there. That letting people have access to the dashboard can be useful for like deleting sandboxes and rebuilding them like without a base preview. But I guess one thing I'm kind of thinking is that there's the easy no DevOps approach needed of, well, contrib modules could just sign up for a free account on Tugboat and create a Tugboat YAML file in their GitHub repository, and then they can just use it, you know? It's like there's nothing preventing uh, because all of our stuff is on GitHub and there's no restrictions on the GitHub CI, you can just use any CI provider, including Tugboat. Um, but this is kind of a minor annoyance for me, and it's a big hassle for new contributors and new GitHub new contrib projects that they have to set everything up manually, right? So they could set up Tugboat, but they got to figure it out or find another project that does it. And the same thing for running the simple tests, that you can set up GitHub Actions to run your simple test code executions. And IndigoZella in particular has been very thorough setting up CI testing on all of her projects, it seems like. And I think that there's a template somewhere that people can copy from. I don't do a whole lot of contrib work. Does this ring a bell for anybody that there's a
I don't
template
know
to
if there's
copy from?
I don't know if there's an official template for that, but I usually just copy from one of IndigoZella's.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's what
that's
I
what
do
I do
too,
as
but I
well.
think that there's a template somewhere. Yeah. Um, and I would like to find if there's a way for us to standardize that a little bit, or if there's a way for us to make it easier for people to activate, Tugboat um, or run simple test on their contrib repositories.
I think that would
Um,
be really good. I would appreciate some standardization around the simple test stuff, especially. I think that's really useful for contrib. And I have run into issues where like all the tests pass on my local. So I'm like, all right, cool, we can turn on the GitHub thing and not everyone's PRs will fail the tests, but then I turn it on and the tests fail on GitHub when they're not failing on my local. So I'm like, I definitely have something a little bit incorrect somewhere.
yeah, yeah. The most common issue with running the tests on GitHub is that oh wait, hang on, I'm failing to think of what it is now. Um, it's usually that what is it? Like the Apache web server isn't set up correctly, like it's pointed at the wrong doc root, I think, because you end up with like the unit tests passing, but then when it tries to run the web tests, they fail. That seems to be pretty common. But yeah, it's a big, yeah, it's kind of, a little bit voodoo-y to like get it set up correctly. And yeah, but I don't know of a way to do that. Like the whole way that GitHub operates is that, the configuration for the CI is in the repository. And that's different than the magic that Drupal.org can do, where there isn't that. They don't have the ability to just throw in random CI into their repositories and have it execute. That's like a great flexibility of GitHub, but um, it also is the de facto way of setting it up, is that the CI is set up as part of the repository. So I don't know of a way to make that super standard. Um, I think I floated at one point the idea that it would be awesome if there was a GitHub marketplace action for like running our simple tests. It would also be awesome if that was possible for Tugboat. I haven't even asked about that from our team.
I think that like under Backdrop Ops, we could create a GitHub Actions repo that has like sort of action recipes that people can just reference, and then as long as I know IndigoZella said at one point that some contrib will require a sort of special casing, but if there's something standard that it will work for most, we could set it up as a custom action that we create, and then people could just pull that in a sort of quick and easy copy paste kind of way.
Yeah, I like that idea. We have the template repositories too, where when you create a new contrib project, you can clone from the module template, for example. But and that what Jen, do you remember how that's set up, the module, the project templates?
Yeah, so if you go into the Backdrop Contrib repository and say create new repository, it'll give you a drop down and it'll give you a couple of different projects you can clone from module theme and layout. We could just add it into those template projects and have it be there from the beginning.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Repository template. Yeah. Here, I'll share my screen so that people can see what we're talking about here. Okay. All right, here we go. Yeah, so starting from the Backdrop Contrib organization, if you create new repository here, then there's this templates, and you can select, you know, the module template. And I think I can, yeah, sure, I'll make it private, just so that I don't fill up our space. So I guess the question is, yeah, so this sets up the README. I guess the question is like, is adding GitHub Actions in here like too noisy for a new repository, or is it helpful that it would just be there when you created it in this way? But I guess also, like, is it discoverable? Like, you know, could other projects find, you know, this repository when they were looking to set up a GitHub action?
So I feel like this template is not the way it works now. It's not something you don't use everything in here for your new module. It's sort of a documentation starting place. And so I feel like in that sense, it would be useful to have it in there because then when you already are removing a bunch of stuff from here when you create a new project. And so I think it's fine to add it. And I would much rather have like a complete set of documentation in one place than have like most of your module here and then also something somewhere else.
So the suggestion that I was making earlier might not have been completely clear, but if we have a separate repo that's just the custom GitHub Actions, then we could put it in here at referencing like backdrop ops / simple test, and it would pull in the action from that repo. So it wouldn't, it would be like the repo would still be the central place, but it could be pulled in here as well.
Oh,
I like that.
oh, yeah, I like that. Yeah, that would be really nice. So you're saying that it would be like you'd still have to have a workflow file in here, a GitHub Actions workflow file, but you would reference an action from
Right.
another repository.
That's in a separate repository. That's sort
Love
of,
it. Yep.
Yeah, that would
That
be
makes
great.
Much
Although,
easier to remove if you don't want it and much easier to add to your other projects too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we could update it globally,
Separately.
but of course that means we could also break it globally, for better or worse, right?
I think that's maybe what Indigo Zella was worried about when I
Worried about.
suggested this at one point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you didn't want to use it, of course you wouldn't need to. But yeah, but I like that. I guess yeah, I'm coming around, Jen. I think the idea of putting some stubbed work actions in here would be great, or workflows.
Yep.
Which could also include a tugboat. So there's the .github directory for running simple tests and other actions, but we could also stub out a .tugboat directory in here to make it so that when you file the pull request against the contrib project, it would also create a tugboat account. But I think that the thing about that is that you need to then also set up tugboat. Like you have to go over to tugboat QA and create a project. Like you got to link them together. So you would do this where you'd select your GitHub account, and this always takes a bit because I've got a lot of repositories, but yeah, you'd have to create the cord like the associated project over here on Tugboat itself. And so they also redid their pricing recently, where the default plan used to be 2 GB, which could hardly hold the containers for Apache and MySQL, and now the default is 5 GB, which can pretty easily hold a backdrop installation with Apache and MySQL. And if you set up a base preview, you can hold like a dozen previews on the free account now. It's not very fast at this tiny little half of a CPU. I don't even quite know what that means. But yeah, the free plan is now completely a viable way to set up a Tugboat now. But yeah, I don't know. Justin, that probably doesn't, it's probably not fully satisfying, right? It's not as easy as it just kind of being there all the time. Wonder how we could do
So-
that.
The issue is not that we have donated resources and that we don't have enough space. The option is there to do this. It's just figuring out a way to do it.
Yeah, well, we're talking about contrib that
Yeah.
like in core it's automatic, and the kind of question is like, could we extend that to contrib?
Right.
And the initial answer is not real easily. Like we can make it easier for contrib authors to set it up. But I'm not
Do we know,
right
is
away
Drupal-
seeing a way to extend that automatically to contrib.
Is Drupal providing this centrally, or are they just showing contrib authors how to do it?
think-
Justin?
It seemed pretty automatic. Like you didn't have to go off to Tugboat
Oh.
and sign up yourself. Like you put the config file in your repo
That was
and saved it, created an issue, and then it just started happening.
Do you still have to create the Tugboat config file though in your Drupal
Yes.
repository? Okay,
Yes,
interesting.
but you didn't have to go off to Tugboat and sign up for an account.
Interesting. There's probably a way. So there's probably a
And-
way for us to do it somehow.
And you
Because
didn't have access to the dashboard that you were talking about either.
yeah, so I guess if you they must just have it set up so that like the sandboxes expire or something like that
Yes.
to keep them from accumulating. So
Yes, they
you
do.
might get a sandbox, but it might only be for a week or something like that.
If
And then
it's
you
for-
could refresh it and turn it back on.
Is
Mhm.
this for generally for testing on Drupal, like automated testing, or do they use it for like pull requests, QA, like we do? Or both?
Yeah, I think
For-
primarily for the sandboxes, like
Yeah,
same
it
same
was-
same
Yeah.
thing that we use Tugboat for, where it's like you get
Yeah.
a per pull request preview.
That's fantastic.
It was just for contrib projects, like all of them. If you turned it
Yeah.
on in your module, it was going to be there.
Yeah. That's interesting. Because ours like disable if they're not active, but you can click a link and get them back.
That's yeah.
So I wonder if I'm just wondering about the amount of activity, like if there's a Drupal issue that's a year old, can you get it back, or do you have to get somebody to like delete and recreate the pull requests like we do in order to get the sandbox?
I actually think if you commented on the issue, it would regenerate.
It would regenerate it?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can look at that too.
Yeah, we do have the ability to do all kinds of webhooks because all of the contrib stuff is under the contrib organization. And so we could do that sort of thing where it's like when a pull request is opened inside of contrib, like we can fire a webhook that doesn't require something inside of the repository. Thinking about how that could, and then we could register that with Tugboat somehow, saying, hey, like make a project for this one if it doesn't have one. Yeah, because we could centrally like make it so that people don't need to sign up for their own free accounts. That would be a big help. Yeah, I'll need to take a little bit more of a look into that. I'll ask my colleague, since Tugboat is run by Lullabot, I'll ask my colleague how Drupal has set that up for the Contrib organization and see if it's all in one giant organization or if they did something special.
He was the presenter.
What's that?
He was the presenter. James.
Oh, James. This is at Florida Drupal Camp.
Yes.
Oh, great.
Should we do something at Backdrop Live or a user group meeting where we basically show people how to use Tugboat?
That
We
would be
could
really
talk-
cool. If
yeah.
we could get James to come and like announce it at Backdrop Live, if we could figure out how to get it
Oh,
done by then.
interesting for Contributes. I was
Yeah.
thinking just like a session on how to use Tugboat
I mean, well,
would
we
be
could
really
definitely do
great.
that too, but if we could
I-
have it be like, guess what everybody gets? And you
Yeah.
get a free Tugboat instance, and you get a free, I don't know,
I was thinking both too, yeah.
everybody look under your chair.
Look under your chair and you got a tugboat or a tub goat, as the tugboat people are very fond of.
Yeah, there's a Tugboat.
Oh, excellent. Oh, your camera's blurring it out, but
Won't focus. Wouldn't focus on your shirt.
yeah, there you go.
There it goes. There it goes.
Oh.
We saw it for a second.
It's like
It wants your
censoring the
face.
goat. It's like nobody needs to see the goat in the bathtub.
Yeah, you need to hold it up to your chest so that it comes into focus because it's like, oh, that's a person.
Gotta put it on.
You gotta put it on. I'm not sure if Justin is saying anything while. Okay. No.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, or yesterday. I didn't realize I was muted.
Let's see. Okay, one more thing. Since Florida Drupal Camp came up, I also wanted to hear from Laren about how your session went, Laren. Backdrop to the future, right?
Yeah. So, the title came to me. I thought it was funny. And then I decided to, kind of at midnight the night before, go all in on the sort of tongue-in-cheek, retro pop culture thing. And then, I went for it. So, and I heard it's just been posted, I think today, to YouTube. So if you're interested in actually seeing it, I think it's available. But I think it went pretty well. I kind of didn't really expect many of the people who were actually at the Drupal camp to be like, oh yay, Backdrop. They were supportive, and it was very nice. The turnout wasn't huge for the session, but I was kind of thinking of the recording and the post time as what it would be really potentially valuable for people who are interested in sort of fewer moving parts type of CMS compared to modern Drupal that still gave you some of the benefits of Drupal. So I tried to highlight some of those things and the simplicity and that kind of stuff compared to modern Drupal. And Justin was there, so he can also give a third-party perspective. But I think it went well.
Even if people don't come to the session, having it on the schedule is like exposure. Reminds people we're out there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if we can add it to the featured presentations playlist on YouTube, but I'm not sure if that requires that we own the video or not. So
I don't think so. We've added some other
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure we can add it. I can look at that.
Oh, great. Thank you. Because it looks like the last time we added something was 2 years ago, which was also a Laren presentation, I believe. The Drupal 7 to Backdrop CMS for Stanford. Okay. Great. Boy, so many announcements today. We also had some other topics. I lost my agenda list though. Oh gosh. Yeah, all right. So we had a question, Laren, you again, about attaching libraries to theme directories. Do you want to kind of lay out the idea you have?
Yeah, so what I would like to be able to do, and if it's possible, and I just don't know how, I would just like to know how to do it. But if it's not currently possible, I would like to talk about how we can make it possible to define, a library as an attachment or to be attached to a theme call. So anytime if you set up this theme, you can also attach a library that automatically will be attached to it when it gets rendered. So that you don't, so you can begin to split apart and use the CSS or the JavaScript to be added when it's needed, but not in your monolithic, CSS file or on every page or something like that, just because it's simpler to do it that way. So that's kind of for discussion, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure if you call it a workaround, but the mechanism we have right now is that inside of your template or theme function, you would say backdrop add library or backdrop add CSS inside of the theme function to just associate that one template or theme function with a CSS or a library file.
And I guess a little bit further background, I'm working on something. I haven't published it publicly yet, but I don't know if any of you remember Drupal with an O. I think he had I think it's still in Contrib, but it's called Atomium. It's a base theme that sort of reinterprets a lot of the theme functions that Backdrop provides as templates. And so there's some of this that's happening more automatically, and I would like to be able to do this in a more automated way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the normal way that Backdrop works for this sort of thing, like what I would imagine would be the most backdrop-y way of handling it, using current paradigms would be like in hook theme info, we would also register libraries. Like, when you register the theme function or the template, you would also register a library to go with it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, something along those lines.
Yeah, and that might be fine because you have to make that registry entry anyway. Because I was thinking about the convenience of there's a parallel here with Drupal's single directory components where you can just throw your CSS, your JavaScript, and your template file all in one directory, and then they all just get picked up automatically. And that's yeah, it's convenient that it's all just like all there together. And I don't think that Drupal has a registry of any kind. It's just like I think it just finds them. And that has a convenience factor to it that it would be nice if I don't think we'll ever be able to get away from the theme registry because it just does a lot of stuff, and finding all the templates and across all modules would be time consuming. So it's actually just opining a little bit here. It's also one of the reasons why Backdrop is faster than Drupal in a lot of regards because it has less of the magic automatic finding systems. With Drupal, there's a lot of scanning all of the directories, but there's also like reading a lot of YAML files, and all of that is pretty slow compared to a hook implementation, like loop over, hook theme info, which is really, really fast.
But I think what you described, if we have that as a possibility, so you can either do it manually or something like I'm trying to work on would be able to add those types of things in a more automated way. It could do either of those, and if you don't use it, it would just function as it does now, right? So I think
Yeah.
that
I guess, I don't see hardly any harm in having the ability to do attachments like libraries in hook theme info. Like that just seems like that's a cleanup thing where it's like instead of doing all of this like backdrop add library inside of a theme function, if you just moved that to the registry, I mean, what harm is there in that? Almost nothing. And it's like good for transparency that you don't need to go digging into your template files. It's also good for alterability. Like if you wanted to alter the theme registry to change what library was attached, like that would also be good. Yeah, there's almost no downside to it that I can think of. It's just the question is like, is that what we want? You know, like is that the best outcome? And maybe it's not the best outcome, but it's also like pretty easy to implement and very backdrop
Better than
aligned.
what we have now, and I feel like our mentality is sort of like just make it better every time you make it, and even if it's not the best, it still is improving. So
Yeah. But Laren, does that achieve kind of what you'd hoped for, or are you
I
hoping
think
for
it,
something easier yet?
no, I think that would. So maybe next step is me just filing an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised that that doesn't exist.
we have that libraries inclusion in layouts, right? Where you can either add your style sheet or your library. Like, so how we added like the Bootstrap grid library
Oh, to the
layout
.info file.
templates. Yeah.
Oh, to
So,
yeah, to layout
so
layout.
so we could maybe look at like our syntax for that and see how that happened there and see what similarities that might have to the theme.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at. It's not hook theme info. It's just hook theme. Yeah, I can't believe that there's not an attachments in here. Seems like there should be.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Huh. Well, yeah, that great idea. Okay. Let's see. We got 10 minutes left. Any other topics or anything come up for anybody that they want
Jen,
to discuss?
did you mention our issue yet? PMC issue?
No,
Should we do that now?
I did mention the homepage redesign earlier
Oh,
though.
you did, okay. No, the
Yeah.
other one. Jen had suggested, had started an idea in the PMC. I think we've talked about this before a while ago, about automatically elevating issues to the PMC if they reach a certain threshold, like 100 comments or something. And we're wondering, I think the point at bringing it up now is to get feedback from like people who work in the core issue queue, if something like that might be helpful.
Yeah, so the primary reason here was that, one of the goals of the PMC is to try and like alleviate some of the burdens that come from decision-making processes, and especially in Drupal, like having those issues that just churn and churn and churn is something that kind of wear down contributors. Like, oh my gosh, I've left 50 comments on this issue, we're not making any progress. And so I thought it might be helpful for like, look, we have this PMC to help with these decisions. Maybe we should have some process that's like every time an issue gets to X point, that automatically goes to the PMC, and then we can decide if we need to intervene and be like, hey, there's too much churning. We're just going to put this issue on hold, or we're going to decide to move forward with X instead of Y. And that doesn't mean we can't do Y later, but it's just to sort of stop that issue from churning and start making progress on things. And that might remove that requirement for somebody to specifically escalate something to the PMC, which I think right now our process is like, if you feel like you're stuck, ask for help. And I think that that's sort of also a decision that can weigh heavily on people, is like when to actually make that request. And I thought this might be a really clear indicator of like, this issue needs help. If it gets to 100 comments, it's obviously something that people feel very strongly about, and that maybe it needs a little push in one direction or the other. So it seemed like something we could also in our PMC meetings, like review the contrib queue or the core queue and be like, core queue, like what's the issues with the most comments, and be like, okay, this one's at 65, let's look at it, sort of thing. There aren't that many that get over 100. There aren't even that many that get over 50. So I was like, maybe 100's too many comments, but just sort of something to keep our eye on and see if there's more places where we can help make things easier on the community. And so, yeah, we had a couple of questions in the PMC issue, like some developers really like this conversation process. Like, is it most of them that find it burdensome and some that don't, or is it the other way around? Like, sometimes those conversations are really valuable. At which point does the value proposition start to fight with the like churning, grinding feeling people get? So some decision on like where that comment threshold should be if we want to automatically escalate it. Is 50 too few? Is 100 too many? Just sort of like a feel from people who are in those long issues about if we do automate it, what's the point at which that should happen? So yeah, just if anyone here has any thoughts.
Yeah, and I think you had another specific suggestion that was interesting, which was that as part of that process is that maybe we, so if an issue gets really long, we summarize it and open a new issue, close
Yeah.
the old one. But of course, this would be with a summary
And a link to the old issue.
and a link to the old issue.
Yeah,
as
and
a
that
way
would-
of, so that if you're entering one of these old issues, you're not facing this 70 comment or 100 comment list.
to have to figure out what happened through the history of the issue. If we could go through and be like, we've already discussed XYZ, and then link to the previous issue and be like, we've decided A or what have you, then at least we would save the people trying to realize what's going on, the history of reading through the previous 100 comments, and maybe the new issue would also get 100, but then they wouldn't need to redo 100. So yeah, just something to try and make the contribution process faster and more friendly, I guess, for people who are jumping into hot issues or have been working on them for a while.
So, couple of thoughts. One is that, the number of comments doesn't always indicate that something is stuck. Sometimes stuff is progressing.
Yep.
And also, like keeping track of the issues and making so you're not reviewing the same ones like every time the PMC meets, because it'll be the same issues that have 100 comments from
Not
one
if we
month to the
close
next.
them and open a new one with a summary, because now that's down to like however many issues that one's got since the last meeting.
Yeah.
I
But
think the idea is it would be a one-time review, and then
Yeah.
an action would be taken, and then it would be off the list until it needed it again.
yeah, what I would think would be of real value is that like when we want a vote on something, like it's also not quite clear what that process is. And sometimes things are like opened, and they just have 5 comments and they already need a vote from the PMC, when we bump our PHP versions, for example. And so I'd like a not automated way of saying, this needs PMC review, and maybe that
You mean like just like a documented process for like, what do you do when that happens?
yeah, because we have the I think it is documented somewhere that like anybody can request a PMC
Yeah.
vote on any issue,
But how?
but how exactly? And right
Yeah.
now I think that's like send an email to PMC at backdropcms.org.
Or ping
which-
someone in Zulip, or like
And
a
just
little.
for context, I've been on the PMC about 5 years now, and I think we've reviewed one issue. So
Yeah, and I think the
It's-
requests have always come from you, Nate.
Yeah.
So yeah, also I feel like some people feel like they're authorized to bother the PMC with this issue, and a lot of people don't feel like that's their place. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like making people ask for help or hoping people will ask for help is maybe not the right way to go. But I do think a clearly more documented process. Another thought I just had is we could add the PMC group to the core issue queue, and then you can like at PMC, and so you don't have to ask any one person particularly, but you can mention them in the comment thread, and that would automatically fire off emails to PMC members to indicate that we need to look at it. That
Yeah.
could help make it easier for people anyway. It's not like a formal request. You're just like, hey, PMC, come look at this. Feels more casual. I don't know.
to be honest, to me, the more like the elevating to the PMC, a lot of issues just because they have a lot of comments doesn't mean that they need like a PMC decision. That the field group functionality in court is 85 comments. It's way up there. I don't know that the PMC can solve this, right?
Well, we
But
did, right? Like, so that issue is a perfect candidate for needs to be closed and summarized and reopened
well,
because we
that's
did
what I was
reach a
going to argue.
decision. Yeah, yeah.
I was going to argue is that that part makes sense to me, but there isn't like a decision the PMC needs to make.
Yeah.
But summarizing it could be really valuable.
Yeah. But that could be the decision, right? The decision is like
Sure.
this issue just needs to be summarized and reopened. And I think that we could do that in a meeting if we had like automated review. Sometimes review is like, oh, this is fine. Just, help a little bit. But sometimes it's like, oh man, these people are going back and forth on like 3 possible, like CSS selectors in core, right? I'm not sure if that one got over 100, but we had like 3 possible, maybe 4 possible solutions on how to solve that and trying to figure out which one was really like, yeah, could have used intervention there, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I have a suggestion for a way forward would be to try this with the field group functionality in core, which would be to get somebody to summarize it really well and open a new issue, and then see what people think about that. See if they find that helpful, like to have a new issue with a summary, or if it, people. I have a feeling that there's going to be mixed. Some people are going to not like it, and others are going to love it. But
yeah. Another thing that gives me some pause is I don't really know if the PMC is the best suited to like solve technical what's the right word here? Like indecisions or technical conflicts, where it's like there's 2 options or like I don't know if it's a little I would like the PMC to regulate like interpersonal conflicts, right? That but when it comes to like making a technical decision, I'm not sure that that is the wheelhouse of the PMC.
Well, I do think they're like authorized to do that, but they also are encouraged to consult the core committers for technical decisions. And
Mhm.
because this is specifically the core queue that we're talking about, I think that in some cases we're like, we don't know what's best. Let's like contact leadership. And then we bring in all the core committers and be like, these are the 4 options. Like, what do you want to see in core? What do you think is like not practical or whatever? But I think that it's the PMC's job to like facilitate that discussion. Like, you don't want to like expect technical decision makers to find the issue that needs help and weigh in on it, if that makes sense.
I want to reinforce that. I don't think as a PMC we want to make the technical decision. What we want to do is unstick the issue.
Yeah.
Right. We want to do is figure out why it's stuck, and then and that's where we could be helpful. So, but you're right. We don't want to be deciding between this technical solution and that one, because there are better people to do that. I mean, I could also, just to throw something really wild out there, we could take this same proposal and say, what if at a certain threshold, the core committers were required to sort of like look at an issue and figure out what's stuck.
It is
and
the
take
core
action,
queue.
right? But the point isn't about having the PMC do it. The point is, do we want to have some sort of a threshold that triggers an action which helps unstick an issue, right? That's the problem, is that the issue is getting stuck. How do we unstick it in a more regular way?
Yeah. And I'm hesitant to say it, but could we make a label for it, right? Where it just
It
like,
doesn't help though, does it?
well, it would make it more accessible to people, I think, that everybody that has the triage permission could, add the status of needs
But
PMC
now
review.
every one of those people has to read 100 comments.
No.
Right, to get through the issue.
No,
To
I think he's
realize.
just saying that if an issue gets long enough and needs attention, that they could have the label for somebody to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the PMC, when you guys meet, you guys could go to that label of like what needs review, and then once you've reviewed it, you could remove the label.
And that would be so that we could add things that don't have a lot of comments, and we'd
Right.
still see.
Yeah.
That are just like
Yeah.
anything that needs PMC
And
review.
then we could say that any issue over a certain threshold gets that label. It is
Yeah.
possible. And that doesn't mean we have to take action or we have to do anything, but at least
Yep.
means
I think that's
somebody's gonna-
sensible. I mean, we have a lot of needs labels. Let's just make like needs review or needs oversight intervention. I don't know. We'll come up with naming things is hard, but yes, the label is definitely fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the question remains, we create a easier way for people to review things. We figure out who needs to review what. Do we have an automated threshold at which something gets reviewed? And if so, what is that threshold?
Quick context, there's one issue right now with over 100 comments, and there's about 8 with over 50. So like, there's not a lot of issues that are getting that high right now.
Yeah, I don't see the need for it to be automated. I think that if
Okay, so
there's an
even
interest in it,
automated
somebody
would be
can
the
add the
right.
label.
Okay.
Automated
Tim,
so
here's,
that again still needs putting the burden on somebody to make the decision that that issue needs attention.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that like automated might not be the right word, but like just say like, should the PMC review issues with X? Like maybe there's no automated part of that, but like we're trying to sort of remove that burden of somebody having to decide that this issue needs help. It's like, I have no problem deciding if the issue.
yeah.
I mean, if you
well,
want to just do it to start things, you could just,
we could,
Yeah.
sort by comments, bulk operate it, and add 5 things that all need review from PMC, and now.
so
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Tim, maybe that's the right solution is like, let's do it for like one issue at our next meeting
Yep.
and see how it goes. And then maybe do it for like whatever the remaining issues are and see after the experiment, is this a process we should adopt for all future meetings, or do we think that wasn't very helpful?
So
Yeah.
I'd like some feedback. If we decided that this issue just needs to be summarized and reopened, would there be an uproar? Does anybody feel strongly against that? Or is that something we could try? I'd like to just try it on 1 or 2 issues and see how it goes.
We could try it. I'm a little nervous about that too, but if a issue has taken a solid different direction like halfway through, then I think it could be really useful.
Like
Well-
field group and core is a great example.
In the Drupal issue queue, they had a tag for needs issue summary, and they would, there were some people that, they would go through the issue queue and just summarize really long issues within that issue. And
Mhm.
that's something else we don't do very often. We do it once in a while. It does occasionally happen. But I think I think it's weird if you summarize, because I think people are reluctant to like create a new summary and replace the original issue. So then maybe they stick it in the middle, but if they stick it in the middle, then nobody knows it's there and you end up reading the whole. So the point would be like, how can we find a way to better summarize issues and make it easier for somebody to get into them? And opening a new issue is one way to do that. If people have other ideas, I'm open to them.
I mean, I think like we can always add the summary to the current issue like we do now. The benefit of closing the current issue and opening a new one is preventing all people participating in the issue from needing to read through all of the comments. And I think even if you summarize one issue and put it in the top, with having all of those comments there, people don't know like at which point does the summary stop and where do the comments start adding to the updated summary and not the previous summary? And so I think having that very clear definition of like, we've closed this issue, all of these comments are summarized in the new issue and all of the comments on the new issue are after the summary is really helpful for the speed at which somebody can come up to speed on an issue. I do hear, I think it was Olaf had a concern that we lose the comments, like we lose the context of the comments, we lose like who's saying which comment. There is a lot of sort of value in having the entire conversation. But I think that even if the issue's closed, it's not like it's getting deleted. And if we do in our summary specifically link to the comments on the previous issue, if someone is really interested in the larger context and who had which opinion, they can go back and see it. So I'm not quite as concerned about that, but I do hear that there, a summary will never contain as much as the original. That is part of our goal, but it is also a potential drawback.
Well, there's a number of people here that look like they might be showing up for the user group meeting. Because I think we're running over quite a bit. But let's see, let's see, of the people that joined, I'm not sure if anybody had any burning desire to say something before we close the meeting. So Tim, Alejandro, Irina, any comments you'd like to have on recording before we close the dev meeting?
I have burning desire to say thank you.
Great. All right, let's go ahead and close this meeting and then we'll start